This might look like a simple Kinich skill, but in reality it's not, and it will change the way you play him. So, welcome to 7 advanced tips for every Kinich main. As always in this series of videos, we skip the basics and go straight into more niche topics and mechanics. Between the early access and the live server, I've been playing game non-stop and I've gathered some very juicy text for you this time. In the first section of the video, I will give you all the tips I found about his skill one by one. Then we will piece them all together to flesh out a few combos. And finally, use them to calculate what's good and what's bad. Later on, we will also have a section about some advanced exploration tips. But first, his cannon, once available with a full bar of Knight's Soul points, can either be used in a tap or hold version. Tap will target the closest enemy and hold will let you decide where to shoot it. The tap version not only automatically aims, but also shoots projectiles that are able to chase the enemy around, which in the long run, or against very mobile enemies, should lead to more hits. The hold version simply shoots in a straight trajectory instead, which can also be useful. Let's say the closest enemy is about to be defeated and one more nearby is full HP. We can manually target them instead. But of course, it comes with a much higher chance to miss or waste time aiming. But what if I told you there is a third way to do all of this, that also has its pros and cons? And that's a quick hold. Basically holding a skill but releasing right after. It will give you an animation that is faster than both the tap and the hold version. And this is going to be the key that will unlock a combo that I calculated to be 25% better than the one you're probably using right now. This quick hold, however, has the same problems of the hold version, so be aware, especially in AoE, about its use. Generally, I think it's more of a boss killer tag. Let's now talk about his burst instead. As you might know already, it actually increases the duration of your skill stance by 1.7 seconds, which is about equal to the time it takes to cast it. What you would usually think of doing is killing to burst, and then start your combo. But I think that's actually a mistake. You see, the main feature about Kinich is that burning and burgeon hits, with a tiny cooldown, replenish his Knight's Soul points. And that's how he shoots his cannons, spending those points and getting those huge hits he's able to deliver. However, this effect is only active after the enemy has been hit at least once by anything from his skill, which means that casting the burst without having attacked at least once doesn't really give us any benefit. And since one of the most common ways to get to his cannon is to do 2 normal attacks, I believe a good chance to use his burst is actually after doing that once. So to recap, skill to activate his stance, 2 normals to refill his Knight's Soul points, 1 cannon hit, and then we burst. And here's the trick. Knight's Soul points can go up during his burst animation. Once over, you will notice that he almost has enough to cast another cannon. At worst, in half a second, it's a guaranteed second skill right after the burst. You can also just do 1 normal attack into burst, as it achieves almost the same and it's sometimes even more efficient. You're likely overcapping on points slightly, but you are guaranteed to fire his cannon right after the animation. And disclaimer, this is only reliable in a pure burning team. Burgeon triggers are not as safe because their damage is simply not as spammy as burning is. So a few Ascension 1 triggers might be delayed and not give you extra Knight's Soul points right away. This will most of the time be the reason why it can feel a little clunky or rather slow. But another trick that it's worth mentioning is that, especially in burning teams, 2 normals into a skill can actually waste you time. I was going to show you frame by frame what happens exactly, but I'd bore you to death, so here's the short version. Kinich's cannon requires you to collect 20 points. In a pure burning team, 14 are already given to you in just 1.6 seconds. 1 normal attack gives you 3, and simply being in that state for 2 seconds gives you 4 more. That's already more than you need. So simply put, 1 normal weight into skill is another combo we can add to our arsenal, and it's one of the ways we can achieve 5 cannons per skill. And it gets even better if we manage to coordinate with the blind spots. Those would give us 4 points. Finally, let's piece everything together. I will refer to skill to either open the rotation or shoot his cannon, and n plus a number to indicate how many normal attacks we're doing. And we start by saying that the most common, no tricks, nothing special combo is 2 normals followed by a skill repeated as often as possible. This, with proper burning or even burgeon uptime, can give you 4 total repetitions. Sometimes an extra normal or 2 can be squeezed in at the end, but no extra cannon. This is probably the combo most players are using. So let's add this and a version in which we do 2 extra attacks in the end. Now let's try the weight combo. This starts with 2 normals into a skill, but then just repeats 1 normal, weight, skill. And that's kind of it. But what if we use the quick hold trick instead? The initial combo, where we just spam N2 skill 4 times, can now possibly shoot 5 cannons, which is simply 25% better than a classic combo. Now the only thing left is to try everything we discovered with different placements of his burst. Here's the other combos with the results in terms of motion values provided. The main takeaway here is to delay your burst after 1 normal or 1 skill cast. In Burgeon teams, stick to combos that do at least 2 normal attacks between cannons. Quick hold will always help you unless you find it difficult to do or you are in AoE. This was a lot of work, so remember that you can support everything I do with just a couple of clicks. I have to say that all these optimizations will depend slightly on the environment Kinich is put in. For example, casting his burst, even using the tricks I talked about earlier, might not always be the absolute best in scenarios where you have limited time to deliver damage or utilize certain buffs. Plus, it's a heavy 70 energy cost on a damage dealer that doesn't really want to build energy recharge. And of course, these combos are all backed up by footage done in the same condition on 60 FPS. But I hope to have given you enough context beyond the simple 2 normals skill spam that I think everyone has been doing. And there is one thing I did not cover much in this big combo section, and that's Kinich's blind spots. You know, those pizza slices on the ground you can go to for extra nitro points. And that's because they're quite unreliable. This is what I discovered on them. If you don't give Kinich any movement input and simply press the attack button, he will always follow the same direction unless there are changes in camera distance, like during his hold skill or the distance to the enemy. Those seem to reset its default direction and make him choose a new one, of course if no input is given to him. I've also noticed that if nothing weird with the camera distance is happening, the first pizza slice will always spawn towards Kinich's first direction. The rest seems random between left or right in respect to where you are. Although I feel like it's not a 50-50, to call something truly random, a lot of testing, not just by one person, is necessary, so let's leave it for now. In my opinion, this is more of a system to smooth out his gameplay more than anything, mostly when lacking good uptime on his Ascension 1. The combos I talked about are all functional, even with bad RNG on this mechanic. We can finally talk about something more chill, so let's have a section on the real meta, exploration. Aside from what you surely already know about him, I have a few more advanced tips I can give you. Tip number 1, he's actually a fantastic climber. He mimics every single aspect of his tribe's Saurian. That's probably why he has a mid-air attack. It can be used to create platforms under the right conditions. But something the Saurian and Kinich can do that a lot of people didn't notice, me included at first, is that they can climb for a bit after their skill state. You can skill towards a wall, start climbing, and a how will lift you up. Now you can let go, use another skill and climb again. We're now out of skills, but we can climb a third time if we let go and use his mid-air attack. So skill climb, mid-air attack, climb. Okay, one more. Kinich doesn't take full damage for a time after his Spider-Man jump. It looks to be around 5 seconds, but I'm not sure exactly. If it's not too far, you're good. Otherwise, use his mid-air attack and he will reset full damage anyway. He can also regain stamina by simply holding his skill for a bit, and he can absorb these pyro balls and use his cannon for puzzles or simply apply pyro. He can low-key sustain a burning reaction by himself in Natlan and against the Mountain Fang boss. But don't try in the Abyss, it actually doesn't work. Finally, a brief discussion should be done about builds. I've made some weapon and artifact calcs you can see on the screen right now. Pause if you need. But reminder that Kinich's entire kit is based on increasing his nitro points. The only way to consume them is using his cannon. And that's not enough of a reason to hold back the new Natlan set. The first cannon you launch will always have the buff active. It simply consumes the points before hitting. And remember that anything from his skill, even his normal attacks, are considered elemental skill damage. so they are buffed by something like Golden Troop, but characters like Xingqiu and Yelan fully work with him. This episode was way less about teams and gearing and much more about mechanical tips that Kinich has, which is kinda what I like to talk about the most. But if you have any doubt about anything, do let me know. Shout out to my community for helping out finding some of these tips, for example the climbing one, which I didn't notice at all. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Oh, and by the way, one last tip. Kinich can kind of hit weak points, and I'm ashamed to let you know I probably spent an hour trying to let this thing come down. It's quite hard, don't try it.